Alright guys, how's it going? Welcome back. Today I'm in this 2019 VW Amarok pickup truck. Now the last time I drove an Amarok was about 5 or 6 years ago, and it was an early high mileage small engine manual model, and I just remember being very underwhelmed with it. So when this arrived at the garage last week, I expected more of the same, but I was actually really surprised by it. I'm not a big pickup truck fan, so I thought I'd probably be a good person to give a fair and honest review on one. Most of them are just rough and ready agricultural work vehicles. In fact, I think they stopped developing and trying to improve the pickup truck round about the time of the Cuban Missile Crisis. They all have the suspension from an ox cart, and they're all terrible to drive, apart from the VW Amarok. More specifically, the post-2016 Amarok with the 3-litre diesel V6. This one with its 8-speed automatic gearbox and its 260 horsepower V6 diesel engine drives very nearly like a car. It almost feels like I'm in a Touareg. This has a neat turning circle that could rival a black cab, unlike every other pickup truck I've ever driven. And the ride isn't that bouncy and choppy that it'd make a sailor feel sick, like every other pickup truck I've ever driven. This rides really well. And to top it all off, it's nicely kitted out. The name Amarok, in case you were wondering, is a mythical Inuit wolf-like creature. There you go. That's Matt's fun fact of the day. The Amarok was released in 2011 and it ran until 2020. There will be a new model in 2022 that's actually based on the new Ford Ranger. And if the spy shots are anything to go by, it looks pretty impressive. It's also won all kinds of awards since its release, and you can see why. It's a very competent pickup truck, this. Firstly, you've got the styling. Now, I know looks are subjective, but I think it looks good. The proportions are good. It's quite a handsome truck. It has a premium look to it without being too brash. I particularly like the front end. I love the modern lights and the DRLs. I like how the grille's quite imposing without being vulgar. That's something that VW are very good at. They've got this sort of everyman image. I mean, I suppose it is the people's car, isn't it? Moving inside, it's more of the same. Everything feels quite utilitarian, but not so much that it feels like you're in a John Deere. They've still managed to make it feel quite upmarket. Quite cleverly, they've finished the areas that you touch the most, like the steering wheel and the gear lever, in upmarket materials, which does make it feel like you're in a premium SUV. The seats are very wide and comfortable, and they're finished in two-tone leather. I've got satellite navigation and a reverse camera. I've got Apple CarPlay, Android Auto. You can stream your music, Bluetooth hands-free. All the kinds of things that make a car easy to live with on a daily basis, this has. There's plenty of space up front, plenty of leg room, plenty of elbow room, plenty of headroom. That's no surprise really, because it's a big truck, this. There's also enough room in the back for 3 actual-sized human beings. The back seats are also very easy to get in and out of thanks to the wide opening rear doors. It's all very VW this, it's all very sensible. The steering wheel feels of real quality, and you've got buttons to control the radio and the trip computer and things like that, and you've also got paddles on the back to change the gears. All of the buttons and switches and dials feel big and butch. I imagine not only could you operate them wearing gloves, but I think you could operate them wearing boxing gloves. You get 2 cup holders down here, in case you were wondering, and a big, no-nonsense centre armrest. Everything just feels very manly. It almost makes me feel like going chopping down a tree and then wolf whistling at some girls at a bus stop. You could do lots and lots of miles in one of these trucks very easily. It's all very effortless, really. The whole truck requires very little effort from the driver. Because this is a sensible commercial vehicle, you also get lots of storage. You've got storage up there for, I guess, your clipboard or your books or files or folders. You've got more down there for your keys. You've got big door bins in the door pockets. You've got more in the centre console. You've got quite a big glove compartment. Because it's so nice and civilised, you might think that VW have designed this for people who go mountain biking and hiking and climbing, rather than people who need it for work. But you'd be wrong. Wait till you listen to some of these figures. The Amarok has the widest load bed of any pickup available in the UK. It's also got the highest sidewalls at the back. They're about 1/2 metre tall, which means that once you've loaded stuff in there, it shouldn't fall out when you go around the first corner. I mean, that's not an issue with this one because it has the truckman back, but, you know. It has a payload capacity of just over a tonne, and it can tow 3.1 tonnes, which, granted, does lag behind some of its rivals, which can tow 3.5, but it's better than most. And I imagine towing something with this, with its creamy 3-litre V6 diesel, with 260 horsepower, and its 8-speed automatic gearbox, would be a breeze. As I've already mentioned, under the bonnet is a 3-litre V6 turbo diesel engine, which replaced the 2-litre 4-cylinder engine, which I didn't think was very good. It's alright in smaller cars, but for a pickup truck of this size, I just didn't think it was up for the job. From 2016 onwards, VW dropped the 2-litre 4-cylinder in favour of this 3-litre V6, and it's excellent. I think it's brilliant. It's so punchy. It just feels relentless. Granted, this is the highest horsepower model available. This one produces 258 horsepower. You could get it with a slightly detuned version with 220 or 240, I believe. It's mated to an 8-speed automatic gearbox. Now, you could have gone for a manual, but I prefer autos, just easier. And the gearbox is superb. The changes are immediate, they're so seamless, you barely know that it's changed cogs. This engine paired with that box does make this truck a very appealing proposition. You know, if you compare this to a Hilux, you get an old 5-speed auto box, which does show its age a little bit, especially when you're on the motorway doing 70 or 80 and it's doing 3,500 revs. So if you're in the market for an Amarok, I would definitely seek out a 2016 onwards model with the 3-litre V6 diesel, and preferably an auto box. In terms of running costs, because it's a big engine and a big truck, the MPG figures aren't that impressive. You'll do about 29, 30 MPG combined. It's not terrible, but it's not that frugal, is it? They also have a tendency to drink AdBlue, which can become quite expensive. Thanks to its clever 4-motion 4-wheel drive system, the Amarok is reportedly very good off-road. The ground clearance isn't brilliant, but you should have confidence to go on a muddy farmer's field or a building site without getting stuck. You even have a very foolproof button down there for when you want to go off-road, which clearly says off-road. Reliability-wise, it's covered by VW for 3 years or up to 100,000 miles, which is quite reassuring. After that, you need to service it every 10,000 miles or 12 months. And to be honest, once the warranties ran out, I think I'd just be taking it to a local independent garage rather than a VW main dealer. The issues that I predict you'll have with your Amarok, being a modern diesel, are standard things like EGR valves and blocked DPFs. The only thing you can do to try and prevent that happening is run it on premium diesel at least every other time you fill up, and service it on time, and take it for a long run a couple of times a month, and then keep your fingers crossed basically. On the bright side, EGR valves aren't that expensive to replace, and you can clean out DPFs now. Many places do it using very strong chemicals. There was a recall a couple of years ago on a power steering hose, so nothing too frightening. I mean, I can't imagine it being as reliable as a Toyota Hilux, but I think it should be more reliable than most of the others. The Amarok scored 4 out of 5 stars on its Euro NCAP safety rating, which might not impress you that much, but it's better than a lot of others. Take, for example, the Great Wall Steed. That hit a wall at 30 or 40 miles an hour, and it crumbled like a wet paper bag. So there's a lot to like about the VW Amarok, but there are a couple of negatives which I must point out. The visibility being a pickup truck is atrocious. This one is particularly bad because it's got the Truckman canopy on. On top of that is the sheer size of it. It's enormous, which means parking this thing in a standard UK parking bay is a bit of a challenge. I mean, granted, you've got front parking sensors and you've got a rear camera, so you will, eventually park it up, but chances are you might struggle to get out of it. Even coming out of my full fat Range Rover, this feels big. I think the only way this car might feel manoeuvrable and nimble is if your last vehicle was a Mercedes Sprinter. Another negative is the ride. Now, I know at the start of the video I said it rides very well, which it does compared to other pickup trucks, but not compared to other cars. It's still a little bit fidgety, a little bit bouncy, which I think might become tiring. My last little gripe is this. I quite frequently drive with one hand on the gear selector. Now, I know that always brings out comments from people in the comments section saying, get your hand off the gear selector, you'll wear out the flange sprocket in the gearbox. Well, it's my gearbox, it's my flange sprocket, so I'll wear it out if I like, thank you very much. Anyway, I like to drive with one hand on the gear selector, but if you do a left turn, you end up knocking it into manual mode. It's a minor gripe, but I thought I'd mention it. Used prices here in the UK start around £8,000, but beware, because all that's going to buy you is a early, high mileage, low spec 2-litre diesel with a manual gearbox that's probably battered. For a 3-litre diesel V6, prices jump to around £25,000. For one like this that's less than 3 years old with 26,000 miles on the clock, I expect to spend around 35. Now, I know that sounds like a lot of money. It is a lot of money for a pickup truck, but it is a very well appointed one. It's certainly the best pickup truck I've ever driven, and I've driven lots, unfortunately. I think you've got to remember as well, if you're buying it for work through your company, then your accountant will just write it off against your tax bill. So the actual price doesn't matter too much, does it? Buying a commercial vehicle is a totally different ballgame than buying a car. If I were the boss of a company, say scaffolding or building, and I wanted a pickup truck, but a nice one that I could use as my own personal car as well, whilst benefiting from all the tax breaks, then I would definitely consider an Amarok. It's more luxurious than a Toyota Hilux, it's less juvenile than a Ford Ranger, and it drives a whole lot better than a L200. So I think that's about it. So thank you once again for watching. Make sure you give the video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Make sure you subscribe if you haven't done already. I'm nearly at 150,000 subscribers, which blows my tiny little mind. So if you've got any comments or questions, let me know below, and I'll do my best to get back to you. Check out the High Peak store. I'll leave the link below. And yeah, I'll see you next time. Cheers, guys. Oh, we've got High Peak calendars now on the High Peak store, so check those out as well. Cheers. I'll see you next time.